So, good afternoon to everyone. Welcome back to another IT class. So, just some quick revision as to what we would have covered so far for chapter 7.2 because we just have one more topic for that chapter to cover to complete it. So, one of the very first things we would have covered is let me see this previous revision. Yeah, we already covered that default data. So let me get a picture like that. Yeah. So the first question: what is meant by formatting? What is meant by formatting? What do we mean when we say format something? Trinity, you're about to say something?
Sir, like putting the text on different positions on the page,
Okay, so
like
that's an
putting it in the
example.
center.
So that there is an example. But how would you describe it in general? What would you say formatting does? How would you describe it?
It changes the style or appearance in which the data, like how it looks.
Good. So changes its style or appearance of the data. Very good. So that there is a simple definition as to what formatting does. So examples of formatting. Trinity mentioned you can make it bold. I think that's what she mentioned. What's some other examples? What's some other examples of formatting?
Underlining,
Good. Underline. Highlight. Good. What else? Enlarge. What do we call enlarge? Anybody? What would be the actual name of enlarging something? The text. What do we call that? No one? So that would be font size. So we add font size, we can change the font. What else? Imagine you have them right in front of you. It's literally everything that you see here and more. Bold, italic, underline, strike through, subscript, superscript, effects, highlight, changing the font color, changing the font size, the various forms of alignment, the various forms of horizontal and vertical alignment, margin center. Those are all examples of formatting. Now, where does the copy function store its data? Where does copy store its data?
On the clipboard.
On the clipboard. Very good. How many entry does the clipboard have?
24.
Good. 24 entries. And is the clipboard a permanent storage or is it a temporary storage?
Temporary, sir.
Very good. Good. What happens when you reduce a row height or column width to 0? The column disappears. Correct. The column or row disappears or hides. Good. What does the hashtag error mean? Stephanie? Not hearing you at all. Now Africa. Alright, so Melroy says too many words in a column. Nathan?
It's when there's too much data and information in the cell.
Alright. Half correct. Both of you, half correct. Looking for something more specific. What kind of data?
Standard value.
Right. When the value is too large to display in the cell. You gotta remember that. It's only for values. So, what happens when a label or text entry is too large for a cell? So now we're looking at the text now. What happens when that is too large?
That will overlap to the next cell.
Right? It's gonna overlap to the next cell if it is empty. But what happens if the next cell is not empty?
Only the first few letters will appear.
Right. So otherwise the information would be cut short. Good. So only values would give you that hashtag error. The labels or text would give you only what it can show. If there's nothing in the next cell, it's going to show you everything. Overlap over the other cells. Alright, so next we looked at the difference between a function and a formula. So what is a formula? What is a formula? How would you describe a formula? Or if you want to answer, what is a function? Function is a built-in formula. Okay. So if a function is a built-in formula or a built-in mathematical operation, then what is a formula now? How would you describe a formula as an equation that performs a calculation? So the question is, do you have to build this equation, this calculation, or is it already built, the formula? Do you have to build a formula, or is it already created like a function?
You have to build it, sir.
You have to build it. So a formula is a mathematical equation or calculation you need to create. Now, I would have also given you that a formula has 3 parts. Well, I would have labeled 3 parts. Can anyone remember the parts? What does a formula need in order for it to create a formula?
The equal sign.
Good. Equal sign. That's 1. There's 3 parts. A subject, and then we got add a predicate. Okay. Yeah, equal sign. What else? Think of an actual formula that you create, that you would have in maths, that you would create in maths.
Sir, the operation sign.
Exactly. Like, so your operator. And what else? One last part. The numbers. Good. So that's going to be your values, or in brackets, cells. So it can either be values or cells. Oh, well, you need to use the correct terminology. We're not doing English. So a formula is basically a mathematical equation that you would have to create. It basically has 3 parts: an equal sign, an operator, and values or cells, whereas a function is a built-in formula, and the parts would actually vary depending upon which function you're using. So that's that. What were some examples of functions?
Max.
Good. Max.
Sorry, we have average.
Average. Sum, min, and so on. Good. Those are the most common examples of functions. Then next we looked at what is the purpose of autofill. What do we use it for? What do we use autofill for? I see Africa is learning Kung Fu.
So do you hear me properly?
No, you didn't turn on the microphone. You turn on the video.
Oh goodness. So I was talking about autofill is where you, so as you say you have one cell you wanted to like fill out, I shouldn't say fill out, like to have it like copy in the others in a sequence. Autofill would be useful there instead of having to manually put it in the other cells.
Very good. So autofill is used to copy one cell's information, one cell's data, to the other cells. Now, it's basically a copy function. It allows you to copy what is in one cell to the next. But it also has a feature that would allow you to increment what you would have copied. Like for example, if you're gonna have a number, you could increment that number so that it counts 1, 2, 3, 4. Days can be incremented, months can be incremented, and so on. What is the name of the small square that is used to for autofill? Because remember, we got to click on a small square. What's the name of that small square? So what I'm talking about, when you click on a cell, no, not text box, this small square here, when you make that cell active, a very small square is appearing at the bottom right here. What do we call this here? This, what I'm clicking and dragging right now. This is the autofill option, but this small square has a name. No one? Starts with F. Starts with the letter F. It's two words. One word starts with the letter F, the other word starts with the H.
Is that a fill handle?
Right. So it's called a fill handle. So that's the name of the feature or the option that allows you to carry out that fill option, autofill option, the fill handle. Good. Um, what is a range? What is a range? What is a range? A group of cells. How many cells?
2 or more.
Very good. So a group of 2 or more cells. Can you name a range? Yes. Why would you want to name a range?
For identification.
Good. Identification. Good. And to easily locate the range. And to easily locate it. As Trinity said, to find it back. Or to basically easily locate it. So that's why you basically give something a name. You can also name a cell too. So you give them a name because you want to identify it so that you can quickly find it back when you need it. How do you name a cell or range? How do you name it? How do you name a cell or a range? Text box. You really like this word, text box? Yeah, how would you guys describe the process of naming a cell or a range? What does a person have to do? This here is also an example of a question that could appear in your CSEC paper. This is what I tell students every year that is writing IT, that the IT exam does not give you a computer, so it's not a practical exam. But the questions, they come in a practical manner. They ask you questions in such a way that you have to remember how things work. So that's why it's important to always be practicing with the software. So when you tap on the cell, you look at the top left of the screen and you see the name cell. Anybody can help him out? What's the name of that box at the top left?
Name box.
The name box. So very good. So first select the cell or range and type the new name in the name box and select enter. That's the process there. You select the cell or the range that you want, and then you go to the name box and type in the name, and you select enter. What's next? Rules for naming a cell or range. What are the rules?
Use only lowercase letters.
No, that's not one. Yes, has to start with a letter. Can't have the same name. Good. Cannot have the same name as another cell. Cannot use spaces. Good. If you cannot use spaces, what are you allowed to use? How do you separate words?
Sir, you can use underscores.
What else? Can use underscore.
And full stops.
Full stop. And hyphen. Can use initial cap. You can use what's called initial cap. So initial cap is when you make the first letter in each word a capital letter. So for instance, if you type first name, notice the N in name is a capital N. So this method here, I like to usually use this method when I'm creating names. So instead of using underscore, I would use no space and make the rest of words, the initial letter, capital. Good. So those are some of the rules there for naming a cell. Any other rules you missed? What is the purpose of the name? Why are we creating a name? If you guys can't remember that, and we just talked about it. Okay, Trinity said identification, so you gotta remember used for identification. So it has to be simple. So if the cell contains the first name of somebody, you name it first name. If the cell contains the VAT of the item, you put in VAT. You name it exactly what it is storing. You name it for identification purposes. Good. And we also no special characters. No special characters, and less than 256 characters. Because you want to keep it short also, not too long. Good. So that is what we would have covered in our previous class. We're going to finish off the chapter with title locking. Now, title locking is basically, as the name indicates, to lock a title. A lot of the things in IT, the name literally tells you what it does. The purpose of title locking is to lock a title. Now, why do we want to lock a title? Say, for instance, we have a table, and say we have a table for the students in a school, and we're putting in grades. And we're putting in grades. Now, do you notice what happened to the heading? As we continue to enter grades, what happened to the heading? I continue to enter person's information, but what happened to the heading? Or nothing happened to it? It changes, the heading changes? Or is it simply that you no longer see the heading? As I go down in the table and I enter information, if you notice, I no longer see the heading. So that's a difficulty we have when it comes to entering information. We have a very large table, like for instance this one that we have here. A large table, and what happens is that as you go down the table and you have to enter information, you realize that you no longer know what is the heading at the top there. So every minute you have to scroll up, look at the heading, follow the heading, follow the column, and come back down. You guys ever experienced that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Was it annoying?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it can be frustrating, right? Because you're wasting time. You gotta go up, you gotta go down, up and down, up and down, looking at the heading, coming back down to look at where to enter the information. But here comes title locking, whereby it allows you to lock a certain row or column in order for you to see the information. So, how do we do that? Well, I want you guys to create a table. It doesn't have to be this entire table, but just create a table like this here, up to this part here. So I mainly want you to have this heading here. Have the first row with heading. And what I want you to do is go to the data tab, and no, it's not data, formula, data layout, no, it's data. Review. No. View. Yeah. Go to the View tab. And under the View tab, you're going to see an option called Freeze Pane. Now, Freeze Pane is the name of title locking. That's what we call the Freeze Pane here. So, if you notice, we have three options here. And I'm going to select the middle one first. I'm going to select Freeze Top Row. So, as it indicates, it's going to freeze that top row. So as I scroll down now, notice that first row is now frozen. So as I scroll, I can see I can see that row as I scroll. So once again, you don't have to select anywhere. You don't have to highlight any table or anything. Just go to the View tab after you created your table. Select Freeze Pane and select Freeze Top Row. You're going to notice a line goes across the entire top row. Notice there's actually what looks to be like a line here compared to the rest. It's much darker at the top here. So that line in the pairs indicates there that that top row is now frozen. So, you guys clear on how to do that?
Yes, sir.
Alright, try it on your computer, send me an image. Let me see if you got through with it. Freeze the top row. Send me an image when you're finished with that. Good, Nathan got through. In the meantime, you're trying that. Let me see for Google Sheets. Let's see. Data. Sort sheets, create filter, add slicer, protect movement function. Oh, so notice Google Sheets also has the option. Notice on the view, there's a freeze option here. So you can freeze no row, you can freeze one row. So notice that first row there is frozen. You can freeze 2 rows if you want. Up to 1 row. And you can also freeze columns. Alright, Africa got through. Stephanie, Oceana, Melroy, are you guys getting through? Alright. Seems Melroy got through. Yeah, just scroll down and see if the if you see the row, it goes from 1 to a different number. You're only seeing row 1, but then you're seeing the other rows as you scroll. Okay, good. So that means you got through. Stephanie and Oceana.
Yeah.
Alright. Oceana has hers. Good. Stephanie, are you with us? Alright, in the meantime, we can also look at the other one. Well, you're sending your Stephanie, you getting through? Alright. So now Melroy joined for the day. Trinity, you gotten through? You tried it?
I think so.
You tried it with Google Sheets?
Yeah.
So on the view, you're gonna see the freeze option.
Okay, sir.
Okay, good. So Trinity got through. Oh, she's using her phone? Okay. Okay, good. Now let's try freezing our column. So for those using Office, to take off the freeze option, you simply use the first option. You'll notice it's now on freeze pane. So select that, and it's going to take off the freeze option there. So now what we're gonna do, I'm just gonna highlight the first column so that we can see it better. I'm gonna put it into orange, and what I'm going to do, go back to view, go back to freeze pane, and then I'm going to select freeze first column, and now the first column is now frozen. So when I scroll out to the right, I am still seeing that first column there. So try that now. Try freezing the first column. Just let me know if you got through. So freeze pane and then freeze first column. For Trinity, that's going to be right here on the view freeze. You're going to have the column options here. Alright, Nathan got through. Just let me know if you got through. You don't have to send a picture.
Yes, sir.
Alright, so we just learned how to freeze the first column. We just learned how to freeze the first row. But what if now we want to freeze a row and a column at the same time? So I'm going to highlight the first two row, and I'm going to highlight the first two column, because I want to freeze those two. First two row, first two column. So what I basically need to do, whatever group of rows that I want to highlight. For instance, I want to highlight the first two row. I need to go to the row right after. So once again, if I want to highlight the first two row, I need to go to the row after that. So that's going to be row 3. Select any cell in row 3. If once again I wanted to highlight the first 4 row, I would have to select any cell in row 5. Are you guys following? Are you guys following? So we're selecting the row after what we want to freeze. Same for your column. I want to highlight, or I want to freeze these two columns here. So what I need to do, I need to select a cell right after those two columns. So I'm going to select a cell after those two columns. So that's why I got to select this middle point here. So this cell here in red, I have to select this one because it's right after the 2 row and it's right after the 2 column. If I selected this other red here, if I had selected this red here, then that means I am freezing the first 4 row and the first 3 column. So let me turn this back to white and put this back here as red. Good. So this here is what I'm freezing. The first 2 row and the first 2 column. This is where you gotta put this you gotta make this cell here active. So what I gotta do now, go back to view, go back to freeze pane. If you're freeze paning on, you need to take it off, so unfreeze, and then go back. And now we are going to use the very first option. So the very first option is when you want to freeze both a row and a column. So if you notice the description, keeps rows and columns visible while the rest of the worksheet scrolls based on the current selection. So based on where I selected, that is where it's going to freeze. So I selected this cell here, I select freeze pane, and if I scroll to the right, notice my column remains. So notice I'm at B and Q, but if I scroll down now, notice my row remains. Notice I have 2 and 16. So both the first 2 column is frozen and these first 2 rows are frozen. So once again, when you're freezing both row and a column, you have to select the cell that is after both of them, after the row, after the column, and you use the freeze pane option at the top here. So try that, and scroll to the right and scroll downwards also, and send me a picture of that so that you can see you got through. So your picture should look something like, shucks, it took off. Your picture should look something like this here, whereby I can see B and another column, and I can see 2 with another row. So try that. For Trinity, let me see. It should be the same process. They would usually make it much easier. Let me see if I put the cursor here. Freeze up to column C and freeze up to row 4. Yeah, you just gotta select the 2 options. Select the cell, go to view, and select up to. Alright, Nathan got through. Stephanie got through.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I don't know why, but whenever I try to lock when I use freeze pane to lock the first sorry, read this one. The first column and the top row, and then when I try to also lock the first column, what the previous thing that I did gets undone. So you can only do one at a time. You can't have both happening.
Alright, that is because you're using the wrong option. Freeze top row is a one-time option. It's only going to freeze the top row. Freeze first column is also a one-time option. and it's only going to freeze the first row, first column. What you're supposed to use is the top option here, freeze pane.
Give it just a second.
So unfreeze, select unfreeze, and then you can see it turn to freeze pane.
Alright, it worked on the first column.
But remember, you gotta select a cell that is more inward, like how I selected this red cell here.
Yeah.
2 columns after, to the third column, the row after the 2, and select freeze pane.
Oh yeah. Thank you, sir. I didn't get to hear that part. That's why I was going to ask you to repeat and also what happened to me answers the question. So yeah, thanks, sir.
Good. So just remember, whatever row you want to freeze. So if you want to freeze these first row, select the cell after the first 4 row. Same for column. If you wanted to freeze these first 4 column, select the cell right after it. Alright, seems everybody getting through. Good. So that there is title locking. And that brings us to the end of this chapter here, not the end of the class. So that brings us to the end of chapter 7.2. Any questions in this chapter here before we move on? We basically just reviewed everything at the beginning of the class, so we're not going to review it again. We looked at what is worksheet, spreadsheet, what is the active cell, what is cell reference, what are the types of data, formatting, copy and paste, formulas and function, autofill, cell range, title locking. That's everything we just covered. Any questions? Alright, no questions. So, we are going to start 7.3. And before we start that, we're going to take a 5 minutes break and then start that. So we shall resume at 4:05. Or I think 5 minutes break. 5 minutes break is enough. Yeah, so Melroy, don't cook.
Long no.
And you don't eat it out.
Nope.
Alright, well, you
No,
got
me.
less than 5 minutes to eat it out.
Make it 10, make it 10.
10. We don't have that much time. Alright, I'll be back in a few minutes. So Nathan, Stephanie, Oceania, are you guys there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Trinity, Africa, and Melroy.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Africa. Africa. Oh, Africa, are you there? Alright, so we're starting chapter 7.3.
Yes, sir. My computer's freezing.
Okay. So we're looking at how to develop a simple spreadsheet. So basically, what we have covered so far, chapter 7.1, we learned about what is a spreadsheet, what is it used for. Then 7.2, we basically looked at a lot of aspects of the spreadsheet. What are like the parts of the spreadsheet? What's the interface? How to locate different options and so on. Different aspects of the spreadsheet software we looked at. So now what we're getting into is how to create a spreadsheet, how to actually design it, how to create your formulas, how to create your functions, how to create your entry, and so on. That's what we're going to be looking at. So the very first paragraph from the top, as with other computer applications, the best results come from thinking about the task at hand. When planning a worksheet, ask yourself the following 4 questions. So if you're going to create a worksheet or a spreadsheet, you're going to ask yourself these questions. What is the goal of the worksheet? What is the purpose of it? Is it for an assignment? Is it for a customer? Is it for a friend? Is it for a business? Is it for a client? What is the goal of it? Is it to present data? Is it to store data? Is it to calculate something? What is the goal? The second question, what are the desired results, or what are the outputs from this spreadsheet? Do you want to see a graph? Do you want to see numbers? Do you want to see text? What do you want to see as the result from this spreadsheet? Then you're going to ask yourself, what data is needed, or what do you need to input in order for you to get these results, in order for you to calculate these results? And then lastly, what calculations are needed to produce the results? So this is what you're going to think about when you're creating a spreadsheet. And if you guys can remember from third form, we looked at a cycle in third form called IPOS. You guys can remember that cycle?
So it's basically our computer gets tasks done, like, and it represents input, output, processing, and storage.
Very good. So it's how the computer works, and its input, processing, output, and storage. So this very same software, spreadsheet, works the same way. Everything your computer does, including how software work, follows this cycle, the IPOS cycle. So that's why you're also seeing those same questions popping up here. What is the output? What is the input? What is the calculations? Calculation is the process that needs to be carried out. So what do you need to put into the computer? What do you need to calculate? And what do you need to output? What results do you need to produce? Those questions you would ask when you are designing a spreadsheet. Now, why are you going through all of this process? Why? Why so much work for a simple spreadsheet? Well, sometimes a spreadsheet is created to solve a problem for just one user and it is never used again. So, for instance, I might give you an assignment, you create it one time, and that's it. You never see this assignment again for the rest of your life. Now, it is set up quickly to get some results, but the appearance is not important. So you just focused on doing the table, creating a calculation, but you're not too concerned about how it looks. So no one other than the creator of this worksheet will see it, since it will only be used once. So the creator of such such spreadsheet would still consider the 4 questions above, just not in a structured way. So even if you're doing an assignment, it's a one-time use. You're still asking yourself these questions, but you might be asking yourself unconsciously because you still got to figure out, what do I need to put into the spreadsheet, input, what do I need to calculate, process, and what result am I going to get from that process? What result will I get from that calculation? It's still the same questions you're asking, but just that you might not even realize you are asking it. Now, that's for a one-time use. Another form of worksheet is one that will be used many times. Like, for instance, when I am doing your grades, I have a spreadsheet that I am using many times. I'm using it very often to enter your grades, to enter your attendance, and all of those things. So only its creator is going to be using it. Only I use this spreadsheet here. So the author will take a little more time with the above questions and the layout and the appearance of the worksheet. And the appearance of the worksheet will probably be better. So let me see if I can find an example that I can put up. Of one of my previous spreadsheets. Okay, that's the mark book. I'm looking for grades. Yeah, this is an example here. So this is an example of a spreadsheet that I would set up. It's somewhat similar to the one I would set up for you guys. I would have a table basically. I would have a title, a few titles here, some headings as to what each column is for. So notice this one is last name, this one is first name, this is the first assessment, this is the second assessment, the third assessment, and then I would create a function here to do my calculation. I would autofill that function so that it calculates for everyone. I would use another function here to determine if you pass or you fail, and once again autofill it so that it works for everyone. Then I would do another calculation to determine what was your average percentage, autofill that also. So this table here is designed in a more structured manner. I'm more concerned about the appearance. I want the layout to look this particular way so that I can easily organize all the information and quickly carry out the necessary calculations, put my formulas in the necessary order, and so on. So that there's an example of how spreadsheets are used, how they're being used today. So the final category now of spreadsheet is one that is set up for somebody else. You're creating it for someone. So, more time must be taken to answer the above questions, and the spreadsheet will need good design and documentation. So, say for instance, any of you have parents that have a business or a family member that has a business.
Yes, sir.
And they ever ask you to do something on the computer for them?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you can have situations like that. It don't have to only be when you finish school, then you start working. You could have family members that have a certain business or something, and they know you're going to school, you're learning these things, and they might simply ask you if you can create something for them. So this is where you will enter this kind of situation, whereby you have to go and create a spreadsheet for this person. So you now would have to ask the family member these questions here. What do you want from this worksheet here? What's your goal? What's the purpose of it? Is it to calculate price per item? Is it to document an inventory? What's the purpose of it? Then you're going to ask them, what do I need to input? What do I need to calculate, if I got to calculate anything at all? And what do I need to output? Same questions you would ask them. And from that now, you would structure your spreadsheet. You would design your spreadsheet. You would think of how are you going to design it so that anyone that looks at it will be able to understand the flow of information. For example, this one here, it wasn't really designed for anyone to look at, anyone to follow or to fully understand it. But from your first look at it, is it understandable? Is the layout understandable?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's relatively understandable because you can see a column for names, column for grades, column for total, pass and fail, and what's the percentage. Relatively, but that wasn't the focus though. But that's basically what you have to think about. How can I design it so that when persons look at the spreadsheet, they'll be able to clearly follow the information, and you would create good documentation in that. You might do up a simple documentation, like for example, how I have here. I have a key. For example, I had I think I had here. I had some colors. Yeah, see how I place some colors. I think I had a key at the bottom here at one time. I think I would put the color gray to indicate that that person was late. I think I had placed yellow for present, and red was for absent. So like say for instance, you looked at it and you saw red somewhere, you would know that person brought in their grade late. You already were absent or something like that. So good documentation, it helps persons to read the spreadsheet with no problem and be able to follow it and use it with no problem. So since other people will have access to the spreadsheet, the creator of the spreadsheet may have to meet with the user many times so that they can make suggestions and approve it until it is finalized. So that's the three methods there of how we create spreadsheet. Could either be for personal use, could be for more professional use, or you're creating it for someone. But the main point to remember that when you're creating a spreadsheet, you're asking yourself these four questions here. What is the goal? What is the output? What is the input? And what is the calculations? Are you guys following in all that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Great. So, our next topic, arithmetic formulae. Now, we're now going to be looking at, in detail, how to create formulas, how to create functions, and so on. we already looked at it. We looked at the overview. Now, if you have many operators in a formula, it is important to follow the rules for the order of operators. And you guys already know this rule. BODMAS. Anybody here doesn't know what BODMAS is? Exactly. So all of you should know. I was going to call your name, but I didn't want to say it out loud. Yeah, but we know what is BODMAS. And we know BODMAS stands for brackets, or order, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. Our formula follows BODMAS. So it's just exactly everything you would have learned in maths, we are applying here. The same order of operation, the same order of calculation, we follow here. So if you see some sort of calculation in a bracket, you know that is what is going to be calculated first. For example, if you saw A1 plus B2 plus C3, you know everything is going to be added. There's no precedence over anything. But if you saw B2 and C3 in brackets, you would know these two have to be added first, and then you add it to A1. Then we know power is next, then division, then multiplication, then addition, and then subtraction. So in a spreadsheet, formulae are used to calculate answers based on mathematical equations that you create. So you are creating these mathematical equations. That is a formula. A formula is a mathematical equation that you are going to create. So these are some examples, or these are three formats as to how we can create a formula. Now a formula can use actual values. So you can't create a formula like this here using numbers only. Nothing's wrong with that. So you can go into spreadsheet, and you can try it out also. You can go into spreadsheet and type in equal 10 times 4,000 and you'll get your answer. Anything you want to calculate, you can type in those numbers and it's going to calculate it exactly for you. You can also use cell addresses, which we know as the cell names, or a combination of the two. You can use a cell address and a number. Nothing's wrong with that. So I can take the same number here, equal that address there, and then multiply it by 7, and I get to another calculation there. So you can use actual values, you can use cell addresses, you can use a combination of the both. Nothing's wrong with that. But if you guys can remember, the reason why we use the cell address is for automatic recalculation. So when I change information in one cell, it reflects over into the other cell. So just remember that. Now, to enter a formula, or basically the parts of a formula, which we already learned, you click the cell where you want to insert the formula. So you go to the cell, you type in the equal sign, and you enter the formula, which is going to be a combination of operators and values or cells. Good. So that's it there for formula. You guys following?
Yes, sir.
Any questions from anyone? Alright, so let's look at what's a function now. Functions. Functions are a powerful part of Excel. The syntax or structure of a function is the following. So these are the parts of a function. This is generally how a function is built. So the first part is an equal sign. So the first part is always an equal sign. The second part is always a function name. So those two parts are always the same. And the third part, once again, always the same, is a bracket. So equal sign, the name of the function, and you open a bracket. These three always go in this order here, no matter the function. Now when you open the bracket, you are going to enter one or more arguments. Now what is an argument? As you can see in the paragraph here, an argument is mostly a cell reference, a range of cell, or simply a number. So in the bracket, remember you're creating a formula and you have to say what you're going to calculate. You're going to calculate this cell, you're going to calculate this number. So we call those arguments in a function. And once you are finished entering all of your arguments, you must close with a bracket. We know that from maths, once you open a bracket, you have to close the bracket. So 5 parts. Your function has 5 parts. An equal sign, a function name, an open bracket, one or more arguments, and note, some have no arguments. Yeah. So some function do not need any arguments because they don't need it for their calculation. They can work on their own. But this is the general structure for most functions. Start with the equal sign, put the name of the function, open a bracket, put in brackets the arguments that you're going to calculate, and then you close with a bracket. So this here at the bottom is how it will look. This here. Equal sign, function name, open bracket, one or more arguments, and then you close your brackets. So as mentioned, an argument is mostly a cell reference, a range, or a constant, which is basically exactly what you enter into a formula. Now, there are some functions, as mentioned, that do not use arguments, but you still need the open and close brackets. So it's the same structure, same equal function name, open and close bracket, but you do not put any cell into it, you don't put any number into it, you do not put a range into it. Now the number of arguments will vary in different functions. So the following examples illustrates the most frequent used functions. So we're just going to look at the average one for this afternoon. The average function is a simple function that is used for calculating the average of a group of cells. Now, what I need you to note is that we have this word called syntax, and I need you to remember this word because it's going to be used often. Syntax, or structure, how something is made up. I need you to remember that. Syntax or structure, how something is made up. So when I say what is the syntax of the function, I'm asking you, how is the function made? What are the parts of the function? Now, as we just learned, some functions have more than one argument. So that's what I'm talking about. Let me show you an example. So notice this one here. This one has two arguments. It has range of cells, it has criteria. Notice this one here. This one has three. It has year, it has month, it has day. You have to remember how many arguments it has and what are the arguments. That's what you gotta remember. So when I say syntax, I'm talking about everything about the function, how it is built. So this here is the syntax for the average function. You're simply, the arguments are simply a range of cells. So it's relatively simple. You enter a group of numbers. And you simply type equal average open brackets. You highlight all of those cells, or you could have typed it if you rather doing it the long way. And you close bracket and enter, and you get the average of those cells there. So try that. You can also try you typing in numbers, because remember you can type in numbers also. 4, 8, 5, 32. Type in any random numbers and close brackets, and you can see it calculates that also. And you can even do a combination. Equal average open brackets, highlight the range, comma, and type in some numbers, close brackets, and it's going to calculate all of that. So try that. Try all three.
Excuse me, sir.
Go ahead.
You don't always have to put the function name, right? Because sometimes I wouldn't put the function name. I would just use the. Yes, let's say I get two cells, and in brackets I would put the sign like maybe plus, and I'll get the answer without having to put the function name.
Okay, well that what you would have created there is called a formula, and I'm glad you brought that up, because you need to understand that there's a difference between a function and a formula. A formula is when you're putting in the operator. Like for example this here. These are all examples of formula. Anytime you put an operator, whether multiplication, addition, subtraction, division, anytime you putting in an operator, you are creating a formula. Anytime you're doing that, you're creating a formula. If you do not put in a operator and it carries out a calculation, you're creating what is called a function. And you have to remember the difference between the two, because for exam purposes it's important, and for SBA purposes it's important, because they can ask you questions like create a formula, and you have to create a formula, and they can ask you another question, create a function, and you have to create a function, or select which one is a function, select which one is a formula. So you got to remember the difference. So going back to what you said, yes, right now we are creating a function, so we have to type the name of that function. You were out of class just now, so this part here, I'm hoping you're going to watch back the recording, but this is what you missed just now. This is the 5 parts of a function. It must have an equal sign, it must have the name of the function, it must have an open bracket, it must have arguments, which are called cell reference, the range of a cell or a number, and it must have a closing bracket.
Alright, thank you, sir. I actually got knocked off. The internet connection was lost.
Alright, good, no problem. Just ensure you watch back what you missed, right?
Yes, sir.
Good. Alright, so the rest of you created that?
Yes, sir.
Alright. It's a simple function. Good. Now, so in review of what we looked at today, we looked at the questions that you need to ask yourself when we started 7.3, and when you're creating a spreadsheet, you're going to ask yourself these 4 questions here. What is the goal? What is the input? What is the processing? What is the output? Then we looked at the difference between a function and a formula. Remember, a function and a formula, both of them, they follow BODMAS. Both follow BODMAS. So even in the function, you can put brackets. It all depends on how you're using it. But if you do use brackets in the function, or with the function, it's going to follow BODMAS. And we looked at the parts of a formula once again. We looked at the parts of a function, and then we looked at what is a syntax and the average function. Any questions before we close? Alright, if no questions, that will be it for today. Enjoy the rest of your day.